Alright, all you insomniatic TV channel surfers out there tonight, welcome back to the Tuesday Night Special. And during the break, folks, we actually looked up the history of the United States Championship, and the longest reigning United States champion was Lex Luger for 523 days, and the longest reigning champion under the WWE banner was Dean Ambrose with 351 days. So yeah, with MVP saying that he was one of the longest reigning champions, in SmackDown history, sure. In history according to Wikipedia, absolutely not. But besides that brief history of the United States Championship that was first held by Harley Race, by the way, I think it's time for us to go ahead into another channel surfing edition of the As Seen on TV. And speaking of history, folks, the next show we have up on the plate is none other than Jackie Chan Adventures. And what does that have to do with history? Well, for those who don't know, Jackie Chan, who would be a professional archaeologist, would end up discovering a talisman that was lurking within a shield, only for an organization known as the Dark Hand, who was a criminal organization that served a demon known as Shendu, who was turned into a dragon, and who needed all of the talismans back to bring himself back to life, for them to rule the world, and for the Dark Hand organization to be bathed in riches for helping him. For Jackie Chan to team up with Section 13 to counter the threat of the Dark Hand. By any means necessary, too. Might as well add that in. And with those meat and potatoes out of the way for this said show, folks, what did I love about this show? Well, besides the fact that those talismans that we mentioned earlier all have special powers linked to the Chinese zodiac, including possibly one of my favorite ones, which was the Ox Talisman, which gave people super strength, and I do believe the power of the dragon that gave you the ability to use explosive bursts of fire. Yeah, a lot of cool talismans that they had, and they had one that represented each form of the Chinese zodiac, which was 12 of them. And I will go into a complete list of all of them, and according to the Mike Show, he said we might as well, which is not only the rat, the ox, like we mentioned before, the tiger, the rabbit that gives you super speed, dragon, snake that gives you invincibility, horse that allows you to heal yourself, sheep that gives you astral projection, the monkey that allows you to shape-shift, the rooster that gives you the power of levitation, the dog which gives you immortality, and of course the pig that gives you the ability of heat vision. Really, I didn't know the pig was the one that gave you the laser beam eyes that Superman would, but yeah, the pig. And before we forget, folks, the rat gives you the power to change things into different things. Like, for example, if you're holding on to that talisman and say rats, it turns people into rats. Yeah, that's a thing that it could do. And with those talismans explained, folks, another thing that I loved about the show was the different amount of voice actors that was featured during it, including Clancy Brown, which, for those who don't know, was the guy who played Kurgan in the classic movie of Highlander, and was also featured as the warden in Shawshank Redemption, and even Mr. Krabs featured in the classic show of SpongeBob SquarePants. And you also had Jim Cummings during this said show, who was featured in just about every single major cartoon you grew up with since you were a child. And the reason why in the world we ended up saying that, folks, because he was featured as Winnie the Pooh, Darkwing Duck, Tigger, Pete, and I do believe well over 1,108 separate characters that he's been in his illustrious career, which is insane. And also, before we forget, another person featured during this show was Glenn Shaddix, who was featured not only in the classic movie of Beetlejuice, but was also known as the mayor from The Nightmare Before Christmas. Nice! And you also had Susan Eisenberg, who was featured during this said show, who actually played Wonder Woman, a part of the Justice League, for well over a decade now. I would have said 2 decades, but I didn't see any new versions of the Justice League in animated form in this year. So yeah, she played Wonder Woman for a better part of 20 years. You know what? Maestro said we might as well give it to her, so yeah. She's been Wonder Woman for well over 20 years in the animated series business. And you even had James Hong, who was featured during this show, who was not only featured as the master in Kung Fu Panda 1 and 2, but was also featured in Mulan, Blade Runner, and even Big Trouble in Little China. Now, before anybody says why in the world we're not mentioning Jackie Chan, who was featured during this said show, he was an executive producer during this said show, but unfortunately was not a part of the show as a voice actor during the said show. Even though they give him credit for it, it wasn't really his voice during that said show, but he was featured during the end of every episode answering your questions at home and giving you guys some cool inside information about himself, which was always a cool thing for me every single time I would see this show on a Saturday morning. And for those who are wondering out there, this show debuted on September 9th of 2000 and would last all the way until July 8th of 2005 and would eventually go on to the all-new adventures of Jackie Chan that would take place outside of the United States. Now, I really wish that I got a chance to see that show, but I got a feeling I would have to know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy to truly get a chance to watch that show in its entirety. And I would have to say, before the maestro even asked it, who was my favorite character during that said show, I would have to say Uncle Chan, because of not only all of the things he would say of wisdom during the show, and not to mention using his 2 fingers to smack Jackie Chan in the head whenever he forgets any teachings that Jackie would learn during that show, but also because he would get the willies whenever the Dark Hand shows up, which I do believe the leader of Section 13 would say, I don't believe in that nonsense, until one night they actually showed up in droves by the base where they were trying to protect one of the talismans, which was funny, extremely funny to me. And before we go any further, folks, one of my favorite episodes of this show would have to be before the summoning of the evil dragon itself, which would see Jackie Chan actually using one of the talismans to bring out his evil side, and would then do a guitar solo before jumping onto the back of a truck. Yeah, I don't know why, but it was definitely something magical, because he would go out and go, meow, 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 all before jumping on the back of the truck. Yeah, Maestro, we had to do the guitar solo so people know what I was talking about. And seeing the fact that we don't know how to review TV shows along the lines of TV Guide or any of those TV reviewers you know of out there, we say this. If you guys want to go ahead and watch a show featuring a guy who somehow reminds me of Indiana Jones and Little China trying to protect the world from an evil organization trying to revive a dragon statue turned sorcerer that somehow manages to try to foil Jackie Chan but still can't do it on his best day with a whole bunch of talismans that I sometimes would try to compare to my actual Chinese zodiac to see what power I have, with cool musical interludes at a moment's notice, then I recommend you go out there, pick up your TV channel remotes, and watch that show. And I got a feeling you can find a couple of the episodes on YouTube as we speak. just in case for those who don't want to go channel surfing. And I guess with that said, folks, we might as well head back to the music, and when we return, we'll be back with more of the Tuesday Night Special right after this. So don't go watching infomercials just yet, folks, and stay tuned.